Throughout history, a lot of weird and interesting people were born. One of the most interesting ones is this guy, Otto Skorzeny. On June 12, 1908, in the city of Vienna, Austria, a boy is born and they name him Otto. Otto was born into a middle-class family and he loved studying, especially science. Even though Otto Skorzeny loved science, when he entered the University of Vienna, he chose engineering as his major, civil engineering to be specific. At this time, it was very famous for young Europeans to take fencing lessons. Otto was one of those and he loved fencing, but unlike right now, they didn't have the proper mask. So he has the signature of a fencing scar on his face. In Germany and Austria, anybody that had this scar, it was a sign of being badass, and you were extremely respected just because you had this scar. In the year 1931, when Otto Skorzeny realized that the Nazi regime is taking over Germany, he decided to join the Nazi Party of Austria. Otto was extremely tall for his generation. He was about 6'4" or 1.93 meters, and he was in really good shape, so just his stance made him seem cooler and more respected. The level of coolness went higher when he had the scar added to his face. You might say 6'4" is not that tall, but for that generation is actually extremely tall. Back in the day, in Europe, especially Western Europe, there was not a lot of protein available for children. And when you don't have enough protein while you're growing up, you don't reach your true potential in height, even if you have strong genetics in the height department. So 6'4" is really impressive in this era. In the year 1931, when Skorzeny was in the Nazi Party, he also received his degree from the University of Vienna in civil engineering. So around this time, he was busy being a civil engineer for the Nazi Party. Fast forward to 1938, Nazi Germany and Austria joined together. So Austria is under the Nazi Germany now. After this happens, Skorzeny decides to enter the Air Force of Germany, which was called the Luftwaffe. But he was too tall to enter. And you might think I'm joking, but to this day, a tall person like him can't join the Air Force. At least, they can't be a pilot. When he's not allowed in the Air Force, he decides to join the SS. When he joins the SS, because of his stance and his figure, and of course his education in engineering, he quickly climbs the ladder. And in 1 year, he becomes a personal bodyguard for Adolf Hitler. When the war begins, they sent Skorzeny to Waffen-SS, which was one of the military branch of Nazi Germany, and they had about 1 million soldiers. And since Skorzeny was a civil engineer, his duty was to get the troops out of awkward situations, meaning when they needed a bridge built quickly, or they needed tanks and vehicles passed by a river. He was there to educate them on how to get through. The army had to quickly act and build something so the troops can get through, and Skorzeny was the lead to do that. Otto does his job perfectly well. During battles in the Netherlands, Yugoslavia, and other places, he perfectly executes his job and creates routes for vehicles and especially tanks pass through. Because of Skorzeny's success, he's awarded Lieutenant 1 as a degree, and after he's a lieutenant, he's told to go to the Eastern Front to fight the Russians. He still continues to grow, and they make him captain. In the year 1942, in the Eastern Front, Otto Skorzeny is hit with a shrapnel, and you could say he was lucky to be alive and escape with no major injuries. He was sent back to his hometown in Vienna to rest up. He finally had some time for himself, so when he was back at home, he bought every single book on how different generals and commanders fought wars and what type of strategy they used. Whenever he finishes vacation and gets back to work, he is now the commander of the Special Forces unit of Nazi Germany, one of the newest units created. The first operation they choose that Skorzeny came up with is called Operation Francois. In this operation, Skorzeny's team was supposed to go to Iran and teach the Qashqai people to go against the British and Russian army that were based in Iran. Even though Operation Francois was Skorzeny's idea, but it was a failure and they couldn't do it because the Qashqai people would not work with them. A few months later, Skorzeny starts another operation, Operation Oak. This is one of the most famous operations he did. He was supposed to save Mussolini that has been arrested because of a coup. Even though nobody knew where Mussolini is arrested and he's being kept, but the special forces that was ran by Skorzeny found him and rescued him. When Otto Skorzeny successfully saves Mussolini, he becomes a very well-known figure in Germany. And Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda of Nazi Germany, calls him the most dangerous man in the world. After Skorzeny is given the name the most dangerous man in the world, he begins Operation Long Jump, and this is taking place in Iran as well. When Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill are having a strategic meeting in Tehran, capital of Iran, they're creating ways on how to take over Nazi Germany. The plan was Skorzeny to kill these three, or at least kidnap them. But the Americans, Russians, and the British already thought about this. They held a conference in the Russian embassy of Tehran, where it was much safer, and they were protected with all armies around the embassy, because they always knew German agents are around the corner, and there is always a chance of getting killed. You guys know Hungary. They were an ally to Nazi Germany. It had an emperor called Nicholas Horthy, and you could say he wasn't really listening to Nazi Germany at that time. Sometimes he would take side with the Allies, and he would not exile the Jewish people of Hungary. And that is why Skorzeny has a new mission: arrest Horthy and bring him to Berlin. And Skorzeny very easily does this. He goes to Budapest and arrests Horthy. There were more than 320,000 Jewish people in Hungary at that time. And unfortunately, Nazi Germany made one of the worst decisions in the world. They very quickly killed all these 320,000 Jewish people in under a month. One of the families that was alongside these families was the Soros family. You guys probably know George Soros. George Soros is a child at this point, but his dad knew exactly what is happening, and Nazi Germany is around the corner and they're gonna show up any minute. And that is why he changed their last name from Schwartz, which is a Jewish last name, to Soros, and you could blend in with a last name like Soros. George Soros' father changes all their birth certificates and tells their children, "We hate Jewish people," and basically creates an anti-Semitic home. When the Germans show up, George Soros' father snitches on his own people and shows the guards where other Jewish people are living. And you could say when you comply with the regime, you get a lot of favors in return, especially the goods of the families you just sent to the concentration camp. These things we're telling you we're not making up. George Soros himself has admitted to this. But this video is not about George Soros because he deserves his own video. Either way, the war ends and Germany is defeated, and Skorzeny is forced to turn himself in to the Americans. He stays in prison for 2 years until his court date shows up. The OSS, or Office of Strategic Services, which is pretty much the predecessor to the CIA, realizes what this prisoner is and who he was. So they decide to interview him. And you could low-key say they asked him for loyalty, for his freedom in return. Nobody exactly knows, but it seems like Skorzeny gave these guys a positive answer. Because if it was any other way, someone like him would have been executed a long time ago. But he was free, he lived in West Germany, he had his own engineering firm, and he even gets married. Skorzeny, that was behind the killing of 320,000 Jewish Hungarians, in the year 1962, he finds himself in Tel Aviv. Why the hell are they in Tel Aviv? In the year 1962, Skorzeny was hanging out with his wife in a bar in the city of Madrid. When they were sitting at a bar, they get familiar with the wife and husband, and they start having dinner with them and getting to know each other. Skorzeny offers the couple that we have a villa, and if you would like to join us, we would love to have you. And the couple accept. They go inside the villa, and as soon as the couple get inside, Skorzeny closes the door and pulls out his gun. And he tells them, I know you guys are the Mossad. The Mossad say in return that we know you know. We could have killed you weeks ago if we wanted to. What we have is a mission for you, and we pay really well. Skorzeny says, I don't want anybody's money. I just want to be removed from Mossad's blacklist. The blacklist is basically the Mossad going around the world killing all the Nazi officials and officers because of what they did. Mossad agrees, and they accept that they will be removed from the blacklist. He complies with the Mossad and finds all the Nazi Germanys that were staying low-key all over the world, especially in Egypt, where there was a group of them working against Israel. Skorzeny makes Israel's job much easier in finding these Nazis, and the Mossad would kill each and every one of them. The way they would kill these people is that they would send them an explosive package, and whoever opened it first, it would explode in their face. And unfortunately, a lot of normal civilians were killed because of these bombs Mossad sent to the wrong people. But when the bomb went off, it didn't matter who was behind it. They were gonna die either way. CIA does a lot of secretive things around the world throughout its history, but if you search Otto Skorzeny's name in their website, you will be hit with this writing. They say Otto Skorzeny was hired in 1962 by the CIA to help them assassinate Fidel Castro. Since John F. Kennedy was the president of the US at that time, heavily declines this and tells him to screw. But as you know, the CIA was the one that prevented Skorzeny from being executed. So we know there is much more to the story of Skorzeny and the CIA than it's posted on their website. So why is the only writing about CIA and Skorzeny about killing Fidel Castro? Because it was the only thing that JFK prevented, and it was kind of in the news, so they were forced to write about it. But there is a lot more things that were done that they don't talk about. In the year 1931, a civil engineer enters the Nazi Party of Austria. He slowly makes his way up, and he becomes a personal bodyguard for Adolf Hitler. He keeps making his way up the ladder. He becomes the commander of the special forces. He saves Mussolini. He works for the CIA. He works for Mossad, and some even say he worked for the KGB. But that's highly unlikely. Eventually, in the year 1975, Skorzeny dies at the age of 67 years old. He had a cancerous tumor on his spine for about 5 years, and it was bothering him for a long time, and that was what eventually killed him. So do you think the term they gave him, the most interesting man in the world, is correct? And that interesting part could mean a lot of different things. It could mean scariest, coolest, most dangerous like Joseph Goebbels, or much, much more. What do you guys think?